The 2025 NCAA March Madness Men's Tournament is back, and this time it is bringing all the feels. The biggest event in college sports tips off March 18th, and you don't want to miss a second of the heart-pumping action. Catch all the clutch shots, big-time plays, upsets, Cinderellas, Blue Bloods, and more. Tune in to the NCAA Men's Division I Basketball Championship March 18th through April 7th on TBS, CBS, TNT, True TV, and Stream on Max.
It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
I just want to say thank you to everybody already. But y'all know I gave everything I had in this. And I don't have no regrets. That's one thing I tell them young boys. Don't have no regrets. And so first I just want to say 15 years ago, I walked into this city as a young man with dreams, big dreams, a little bit of nervousness, and a whole lot of fire in my heart. I had no idea back then what this journey would bring.
Hey, Eagles fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, and be sure to bookmark that to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. I also want to mention that this podcast is brought to you by Penco Tech. With 2 convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey and Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive, hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step today at pencotech.edu. Well, we have the Eagles now. They actually had some activity in free agency. We'll talk about that. But there's also, as you heard before the podcast started, one of the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history retired, in Brandon Graham. We'll talk more about that and free agency now with Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. Guys, how are you doing today?
Hey, Chris. Happy March Madness, and Ides of March is past, and St. Patrick's Day is past, and hopefully everybody's sober, and let's have a podcast.
I like that.
Yeah, doing good. It's a good day for the sports world, right? Bob already mentioned it, but March Madness is always fun, even if you don't follow college or basketball all year. If you're a fan of chaos like I am, it's fun to watch. So it's a good day for the sports world. And yeah, like you said, Chris, the Eagles been busy, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, March Madness is always a fun time, as that one too. And as you guys know, we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. Friday afternoon, I will not be around because me and my friends, we have a tradition. We go do a crawl or around a couple places and watch the games and have some fun as well too. It's a tradition and it's fun to do that. So I always know, like, all right, this is good. And also, we know March Madness, you can say that about Eagles free agency, as we mentioned, or lack of March Madness. You can say that as well too. We'll get into that later on when talking about the Eagles. But first off, we're going to start with Brandon Graham, who announced his retirement Tuesday, ending a 15-year career that saw the former first-round pick finish as the franchise leader in games played with 206 and third in the team's history in sacks with 76.5 sacks over his 15 years. I'll start off with this. What is your reaction to Graham deciding to retire?
I'll go first here. I mean, I basically wrote a column after his press conference, basically saying he's the greatest Eagle ever. And by that, and I hope I explained it well enough in the column. But by that, I don't mean he was the greatest player ever. Certainly there are players who have greater legacy. Reggie White among them. I watched Reggie White play, and Brandon wasn't the caliber player of Reggie White, and I do think he's as good as Trent Cole, who's second on that sacks list. Brandon is third on that sacks list. If we're just going by the defensive side, he's one of their greatest players. I'd argue that Fletcher Cox was more of an impact player defensively. But to me, Brandon Graham just epitomizes being an Eagle, and is, when I say the greatest Eagle ever, just, if I'm Nick Sirianni and say, this is what we want our players to be, then Brandon Graham stands on that pedestal as that guy. This is a guy who, Jason Kelsey, obviously legend, but he was a 6th round pick who, came and proved himself when 6th round picks don't prove themselves and don't become Hall of Famers. He did that. But if Jason Kelsey had faded away, nobody would have ever said anything because he was a 6th round pick. Brandon Graham, basically, and he's referred to it often as, was a bust after 3 seasons. After 4 seasons, you could even argue he people were calling him a bust. He had 11 and a half sacks in 4 seasons at that point, as a first round pick, what was the overall? I forget what number he was overall.
I want to say 13.
13 overall. And it seemed like a very unlucky 13 at that point in his career. And then, he started getting more time under Chip Kelly, and under that regime, it fit him a little bit better. And then Jim Schwartz came along and he fit him even better. But through all of that, through all those bad times, Brandon Graham was always a stand-up guy and always willing to work and always had a smile on his face and greeted people with respect, and was, he stayed around, I'm sure, because of who he was as much as what he did as a player, because he was such a positive influence and such a great person in that locker room. And to me, it's those things that made him, in my mind, the greatest Eagle ever.
What's your thoughts, Cayden, or Brandon Graham?
Yeah, it's a testament to how long he played and how he was able to sustain his success. Thinking back on it, he got drafted when I was in 4th grade. So when I thought he retired, I was like, wow, he's been around for a long time, because now I'm 24. So I'm like, Brandon Graham played football for like majority of my life, but and it was cool. I think overall, obviously, he had a significant impact on the field, especially, after Dr. Peterson took over in 2016. He talked about it getting in Jim Schwartz scene, or Jim Schwartz's, scheme. Made his first second team All-Pro that year, and his career kind of took off. Obviously, made the biggest play in Eagles history, and all of those different things. He was a really good player. I thought he brought, the attitude to that defense. Sack totals weren't always high. Career high in 2022, which was still crazy to see later in his career that he, reached his career high of 11 sacks. But just as a run defender and the way he set the edge, and he just, destroyed blocks and was physical with his hands. He brought that element to the defense, and you saw guys like Nolan Smith, and the other defensive linemen on the Eagles this year really embraced that. You saw how important he was to them, and just in general sense, and I think Bob touched on it. I came in last year, I didn't cover him very long, kind of half of the season 2023, and then this year in the locker room, and getting to know him, he made it always, easy to talk to him, when you approached him and you had questions. But, it wasn't always that, he was always easy to have a conversation with. He always took interest, in your personal life, and asked you questions to get to know you. So he was a great guy to cover, and he was a great player. And he's one of those guys that you'll miss to cover and that you wish the best to.
Yeah, I think it's his impact. You guys said some really good stuff there. I think his impact, when you look at it, is not only just on the field with the iconic plays, which we'll talk about in a second, but when you look overall what he meant to the team off the field. And to have somebody who we know he was up there in age of playing 15 years, But to have somebody like Nolan Smith be around there and follow him and think it was that important that he wanted to be there. There's a lot of his teammates that were there at the press conference, but I just remember in the locker room when the talk was last season, if he was going to retire, if he was going to be around, just seeing Nolan Smith walking by and he's like, "Oh, you promised me one more year, BG. You promised me one more year. You better not leave." And shows how much of an impact he had in his season. And it wasn't just the young guys too, the veterans as well. I mean, when the Eagles were going through that collapse, through the collapse, and they had signed Julio Jones, and Julio was having a tough time, like adjusting to his role, like trying to figure out what he had to do to get ball. And it was really tough. And that day, you saw Julio Jones and Brandon Graham sitting down in the locker room. They were talking. It had to be for a good 20 minutes, and you hear that, and ask Julio later on, like what it does, like. He's that guy you can be open enough with. He can talk, he can explain it. And I spoke to Brandon a little bit later after that. He's like, yeah, a lot of times when I tell these guys, like, and he mentioned this in his speech too. What do you like? What do you want to do? You hear about it. What are you going to do about it? So like, sometimes it's simple stuff like that. Just being an open ear that helps out a lot. I think he's going to be an integral part. The one thing, it's certainly going to be a quieter locker room. We know that now. So you won't hear that. He's yelling, but. Yeah, it's going to be different around there on this team. He says he still wants to have a role, and he's going to continue to do that. Now, staying on this topic with Brandon Graham, is there a moment, whether it be on the field or off the field, that isn't? And I'm going to take the one play out where he stripped the strip sack of Tom Brady in Super Bowl 52. That's off the table. We all that everybody knows that's one of the more iconic plays in that. But is there a moment that really stands out to you when it comes to Brandon Graham?
Yeah, I'll start out with this one. I have two that stand out to me. One was it happened last year, but I was talking to Nakobe Dean this year for a story during the playoffs about Brandon. At that time, we didn't know he was going to come back for the Super Bowl, but I kind of just wanted to talk about his legacy and kind of what he meant to different guys in the locker room. And Nakobe talked about after 2023 was a really rough season for him. Second year. Coming into that year, he talked about how Brandon, before the year, told him like the keys of the defense were going to be handed over to him. And then we saw what happened with Nakobe. He suffers to 2 foot injuries. He didn't really play as a rookie, so his career really got off to a slow start, and he was struggling with that. And then this year, after he got healthy before the year, he took over the starting job, and after all all the turbulence that he went through in his career and all the struggles, Brandon Graham went up to him right before the season and reminded him that, I told him, like, I told you so, like the keys will be handed to you. Like you had to trust pretty much. And like, look what happened, and you trusted and it happened. So just the uplifting nature, and you kind of touched on it, Chris, with the Julio story, but I think there's so many other stories if we went around it about what Brandon Graham did for teammates, how he uplifted them. And especially the guys who went through injuries or really struggled on the field earlier in their career, because he understood that. I mean, 2010 as a rookie, he tore his ACL, early on, and he had a slow start. So, I mean, looks like a guy like Nakobe, he understands that, that story. And I'm sure when Nolan struggled, last year, didn't struggle necessarily, but got off to a slow start, and he was getting criticized. I'm sure he understood that as well. So having that, that presence in there, I think helped so many different guys. And then just on the field, obviously the play was really good, but just, the smack talk, I think was always enjoyable. And the one that sticks out to me last year was the Eagles' overtime victory against the Bills. The Bills won the coin toss. And Gabe Davis motions with his hands that they're receiving the ball, and Brandon Graham pretty much says it doesn't matter, and the Eagles found a way to win that game. So just his enjoyable, positive energy, I think, was something that was always fun to watch, and that led to some fun-loving trash talk.
Yeah, I forgot about that. I remember at the time, I was like, oh no, please don't let this be a Hasselbeck moment for him. Like, it's like, he's short. Hopefully it wasn't short of like, we want the ball and we're going to score or something like that. But yeah, it's good stuff. What about you, Bob?
Just for some perspective here, I was in 41st grade when the Eagles drafted. And I'm just going back and looking at this. The year before, I had just finished covering a 7-year run of covering the Eagles from 03 to 09. And at the Enquirer, Jeff McClain took over the beat for me in 2010. And Jeff's like 70 years old himself now. He's been on the beat forever. So 2010 was that year. Two things for me stand out. So I was around the team after that because I was a general columnist from 2013. Really started that the Eagles season, came back and was doing a lot of Eagles from 13 to 17, and then. Or from 13 through 16, really. And then wasn't really around the Eagles much in 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 or 21. And then as fate had it, I ended up with NJ.com joining Chris and Cayden on the Eagles beat in the middle of 23 season. I'm sorry. So 22, we're talking 22, not on the beat either. But in the middle of 23 season, came back. And when you come back, there's always apprehension. Who's going to know you? And two people and stood out in that locker room as, wow, I can have at least not be totally uncomfortable walking around here. And one was Jason Kelsey, who remembered me, and we had a half-hour conversation. And then the following day I went in, and Brandon Graham's like, "Where you been?" And it's a long story, but how you been? And we also talked for another half hour. But the other moment you could just tell two genuine, great human beings, and you could understand why they had such great careers and long careers, because they don't just get football, they get people, they get life. And all those combination of things made it just great to be around both those guys. But the other moment that stood out to me was in LA this year when he got hurt and it looked like his season was over, and he obviously came back and he worked his butt off for that. And you can't tell me there was no way he was supposed to come back, and that's why he ended up tearing the triceps again. He shouldn't have been back on the field, but he convinced them, and he obviously tore it again as he discussed it at his retirement. But just going around and talking to the young guys after that game, it was a weird game because Saquon went off that day. And I was by myself, and neither one of you guys were out there. I was like, oh God, I should really go to him. But I was going to the young guys, and I got to Saquon late because I was going to all the young guys and like, hey, what do you think him being gone? And Kobe Dean was just incredible. He said, he look at him. He's over there saying right now, don't feel sorry for me. He's good. I know he's going to be there every step of the way, encouraging us. That's the only thing we can do for him. But I think I'm hurting more than him because he's so positive. And then Reed Blankenship had a great quote. He said, it's hard to process it right now. He's still going to be around, and he's going to be his happy self. I love him. I'm going to be praying for his speedy recovery. He's a guy when I came in as a rookie, you look to. I'm not sure if all these guys know are playing with somebody that is a great person, a great human being. And I hope one day if I become a captain that I can have some of the leadership qualities, have some of his leadership qualities. He's the definition of a pro. And then Jalen Carter, I'll give you one last guy. Jalen Carter, I hate bleeping seeing him get hurt, especially since this might be his last year. I love playing with him. He's been my role model since I've been here. I know he's going to be there on the sideline. He's going to be yelling and talking trash, and that'll bring energy to us. And all that was true. And just to see how much he meant to those young guys in that locker room. Nolan Smith was also part of it. I won't go over his quotes, but it was just a really cool moment to see in that real emotional time, just exactly what Brandon Graham meant in that locker room.
Yeah, he's going to be somebody who's certainly going to be missed, and especially on that team. But another guy who's still remaining there is Lane Johnson, who signed a contract extension that will keep him with the Eagles through 2027. As we mentioned just now, that he's the last of the main four Eagles remaining, the core four that they had, the veteran four, that included Graham, Jason Kelsey, and Fletcher Cox, all who've now retired. Here's what he had to say about being the longest tenured.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a different, a little bit different even with Kelsey gone this year. It'll be another piece, with BG, same way it was with Fletch. The good thing about it is I know that if they're not here in the building, they'll be close by. So It's really what I'm looking forward to. I'm happy for these guys. They're making a new transition into something else. And, yeah, man, I'm very happy to be a part of their journey and getting to witness, everything that they've achieved.
And that was Lane Johnson. He's talking about transition there, not only with what's going on with the guys moving on, there's a transition at the right guard spot now with Mekhi Becton signing a 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, the Eagles will have Kenyon Green, who they received in a trade with the Houston Texans that sent C.J. Gardner-Johnson to them. They'll also have Tyler Steen and Trevor Keegan likely competing for that job. How concerned are you guys right now about that right guard position heading into next season?
Go, Cayden.
Yeah. Overall, I'm not that concerned about the guard position, mainly because Jeff Stoutland has shown the ability to develop offensive linemen. We saw what he was able to do with Mekhi Becton in 1 year, taking him from tackle, putting him at guard, and making him a serviceable player, probably an above-average player. He got $10 million from the Chargers, and you have to have faith in what he's been able to do throughout his career. His track record says that he can figure out that spot. You look back to 2018, and I do think it's kind of similar. Like Steven Wisniewski and Mekhi Becton are similar players, but they lost Steven Wisniewski. He was the starter, in the Super Bowl. Isaac Seumalo, his first 2 years, really struggled. Was a third-round pick. Couldn't hold down the starting job. Kind of similar to like where Tyler Steen is right now. But year 3, Isaac, took over the full-time starting job. As the season went along, he started to look more and more and more comfortable. And Jeff Stoutland got the best out of him. And you look at him now, got a big contract from the Steelers, still a starter, still a really quality player. So Jeff Stoutland's shown the ability to develop players, especially players, that aren't complete and have had, struggles or have issues. So I believe that Jeff Stoutland will find someone competent at that right guard spot, whether that's, Tyler Steen, whether that's maybe Trevor Keegan, kind of out of left field, or maybe he does develop, Kenyon Green into a really good player. He was able to do it with Mekhi Becton. I think Mekhi Becton was a better player than what Kenyon Green was. Like as a rookie at tackle, he was really impressive, and then the injuries piled up. And I think it was just one of those change of scenery things. And it might be the same for Kenyon Green, but there's a little more of a track record there, making you believe that Mekhi could turn around his career compared to Kenyon Green. But Josh Allen, I wouldn't count him out from turning Kenyon Green into at least a serviceable starter. And that's the second point. I think they only really need serviceable play because they have Cam Jurgens at center. They have Lane Johnson at right tackle. Those guys should be able to, if the right guard, whether that's Steen, Kenyon Green, a draft pick on maybe day 2, like a guy like Tate Ratledge, whoever they throw in there, whoever they draft or whoever the incumbent in-house options are who win that job, even if they're not, great and they're just serviceable and they have some limitations, you should be able to hide some of the things because you have Lane Johnson, because you have Cam Jurgens. You look at the offensive line in general. I mean, with Mailata and Dickerson and then Johnson and Cam Jurgens, if you can just get okay play, which I think you can with good coaching and because of the talent on that offensive line, I think they'll be fine. So right guard's not really a big worry to me. I think they'll figure it out, and whoever starts in there, I think will do an okay job just because of the circumstances.
How about you, Bob?
Yeah, I would tend to agree that they can survive. I felt this way going into free agency, basically, that Mekhi was the guy they could most afford to lose of the big 4 on that list. They lost 3 out of 4 of them, but I thought he was the one guy they could afford to lose because, I mean, we saw Tyler Steen have to play in both the championship game against the Commanders and in the Super Bowl. And the Eagles certainly didn't lack for points in those games. They ended up with 95, I think, in the 2 games. Kenyon Green has one advantage over Mekhi Becton. He's been a guard his whole career in the NFL. So he already has that going for him. And I just, there are 3 guys here for Stoutland to mold. I got to think that one of them, as Cayden pointed out, he's the best at this. Stoutland will mold one of those three into the guy who's capable of taking over that job, and B, having just four other outstanding players on that same offensive line will make it possible to continue to be one of the best offensive line, if not the best in the NFL. So I don't think it's a big concern, but it's something to watch in training camp. So.
Yeah, I think there's a really big motivator for Kenyon Green right now to really try to win this job. Is he's going into the final year of his rookie contract. He's got a lot to prove still after starting out slow. And the one thing I looked at, I was trying to look at some of the clips that he's had when he's played in his career. The one thing I think he needs to really improve upon is his hand placement. And the one guy who really harps on that and the little techniques and the little details that are necessary to play in that position is Jeff Stoutland. I think he'll get that right. But I still think for the future, you're going to go through all this the next year. I think the future right guard is going to be taken in this draft. I really believe to. I mean, Marcus Imbo from Purdue, he was in for a 30 visit with the Eagles yesterday, Wednesday. So I think you're going to see a lot of offensive linemen starting to go through the NovaCare complex with these visits, because I think they really need to address that. And when you look at it, they need to, because they can't keep going year after year after year. They obviously want to get somebody younger who's versatile enough to maybe kick out to tackle within like 4 or 5 years, 3-4 years from now when Lane decides to call it a career. So yeah, Kenyon, I think for the Eagles, the best thing to happen is Kenyon knowing that he wants to get paid. He plays well. You get a Becton type situation where you try to get a comp pick for him and you slide in whoever they take this year to take over that right guard spot. So something to warrant watching through the draft, through OTAs and training camp as the process goes on. So now we're going to turn to free agency news now. And the Eagles have been active in the second wave after seeing a lot of their players go in that first wave, such as Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, and others. One name that stood out as one of the additions was the edge rusher Azeez Ojulari. Here's what he had to say Wednesday about what he brings to the defense.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a versatile player. I'm a physical guy. I don't shy away from no type of contact. I'm an attack first type mentality guy. I can set the edge. I can tackle. I can rush the passer. I can bend. I feel like I can do it all.
And once again, that was Azeez Ojulari. Now, where do you guys think he fits in this edge rusher rotation? And do you think he has the potential to be a starter?
I haven't covered him with the Giants. I know he has the potential to be a starter. Nolan Smith's going to handle that one side. He earned that job last season. By the way he played, by the way he came on, especially after Brandon Graham got hurt, but also even before that, and then the way he played in the postseason, he's going to be the one. If you want to put him in order, he's now the number one edge rusher for this team. It's funny to think he wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the year because Brandon Graham was really in that spot, and just how far he came. But Azeez, I saw him do it in New York with the Giants. He's a terrific player. What Azeez needs to do, he's not the biggest guy, so he can struggle against the run sometimes, but he's capable. He's capable of getting off blocks and holding the edge. And he's more than capable of being a pass rusher. He has, although I think it's a bit of a tainted record, the Giants' rookie record for sacks with 8. It's really, they didn't start keeping till the year after Lawrence Taylor was a rookie, and he had 9.5 as a rookie. But still, 8 is a huge number of sacks for a rookie pass rusher. We saw how difficult it was for Nolan Smith to adapt to playing at the next level during his rookie season. And certainly we saw it with Brandon Graham for years. So an impressive rookie year. And then he came back, he had 5.5 sacks in 7 games in 22. When I covered the full season Giants, he was, part of why the Eagles, I think, dominated the Giants in the playoff game that year was that Azeez was banged up, and I think he played like 13 snaps. He just wasn't healthy at that point. And that's been kind of, as he admitted during his news conference, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But if he can do that, the Eagles might have found themselves a special edge rusher in this guy, and Jalen Hunt can certainly might be at top of the depth chart right now, but he's got competition.
Where do you think, Cayden? Do you think he can be a starter?
Due to his lengthy injury history, I think it's tough to count on him as a starter. Bob made good points, and you look at a guy like Azeez Ojulari coming out. People really loved him as a prospect, and in the times that he's been healthy, he's flashed a lot, and you've seen high in upside. But I don't think it stops the Eagles from drafting an edge rusher in what is a really good class, whether that's in the first round or second round. Fully expecting them to take a defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds, and edge rusher feels like a even bigger need to me than defensive tackle. I have a little more faith in more Joma, being the third guy. I think the Eagles need to add even more depth to this edge rusher room. So I'm not sure if he'll be a starter, but he's got starter talent. I think he'll be in the mix. Possibly, if you look at this group right now, what I'm feeling is I could see a big year for Nolan Smith in the third year, a true breakout year. We saw what he did in the playoffs. There's no reason to not believe that he won't build upon that. He's a guy that could be a double-digit sack guy next season as your number one pass rusher. Then everyone else could be more, they like to have the deep defensive line. They like to rotate. So maybe he's the starter, week 1 on the opposite side. But either way, I think he'll play a chunk of snaps. Him, Jalen Hunt, a rookie of some sort. Who knows what's going to happen with Bryce Huff? Maybe they'll draft 2 rookies. I have no idea. Josh Uche could also be in the mix. But I expect Azeez Ojulari to have a big role. He is a better pass rusher than run defender. And they're going to need some pass rush juice next year, losing Josh Sweat. And he's going to contribute to that. And for what they got him for, 1 year, $4 million, even if he's a high-end rotational pass rusher, to get him in the second wave of free agency is a big steal to me.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the Hunt, I think if anything, his best chance for Azeez Ojulari to try to get that started would have to be on the right side. Because I think they really like Nolan Smith entrenched on that left side. Because I also think of the way he plays against the run, I think that's a key thing. But also when you look at that Ojulari, when you look at where he plays, he mostly played on the left side, but he's balanced enough. I think he has. Last time I checked PFF, I think he had like 146 on the left side and nearly 90 snaps on the right side. So he's not side rush dependent, which is key, which is good. It gives you some more versatility.
He also puts his hand in the dirt and also rushes standing up sometimes. So he's got that versatility too.
Yeah. It's great, which is great because especially when trying to read that guy going, okay, is he more in a position to drop? Is he more in a position to attack? That can be really tough, especially on that right side. If you're quarterback's right side, you're trying to figure out what he's doing. Yeah, that's going to be tough. So you got that. And then you look at Hunt, and I think that's where the best chance to do it. The whole Bryce Huff thing. Yeah. I think personally, because if trades happens after June 1st, because his cap hits like they save $4 million as opposed to money being docked against the cap. So if anything, I think it happens for that. And so they get picks for 2026. I said this before on here, I'm at the point where you go NBA and attach a pick just to move them on because
I already traded Bryce Huff.
He's out of
that's why I didn't mention him while I was. I forgot he was on.
Yeah, I think he's trying. I know they're saying the right things. They can't come out, but the fact is, you signed 2 more edge rushers. Is an outcome. So I probably wouldn't see anything happen until after June 1st when you try to get a 2026 picks or what have you, and that's where you go about it. I know some teams would have some interest in them. I heard one in particular, but the asking price right now would be too high, so they're going to wait it out. So. Yeah, I think it's a ways to go for that to happen. But we'll see. I think Azeez Ojulari could really, just like we talked about Kenyon Green, he's another guy, it's a low contract, a good value for that. And if he decides to move on, you get the whole thing about compensatory picks. It's all about getting those picks and trying to get more maneuverability to try to fill other ways through trades and draft picks themselves. So be interesting to watch. That was a good pickup in my opinion. Now we're going to move on to our run pass option, where I'm going to ask these guys or make a statement to these guys, and I'll have one of two options. If they agree with the statement I make, they'll run with it and explain why. If they don't agree with it, they'll pass it and they'll also explain why. So we're going to go to another free agent signing right now, another ex-Giants player, cornerback Adoree Jackson. Now, the funny thing was that Jackson said he talked to former Eagle, now current Pittsburgh Steelers cornerback Darius Slay before signing with the team. And we all know the role that Slay had in terms of being the mentor type player. Here's what Jackson had to say about being a veteran in defensive backs room.
And being one of the oldest in the room is cool. I came in one of the youngest. It's just a circle life. It's a part of the game. So I appreciate being able to be in this position. The Lord has blessed me to have some longevity to be able to reach this age and now to be able to give back and help. And it's the same way the young guys can help me out because they doing stuff that I probably never trained to do because it's just different times. So I'm excited for the opportunity.
And that was Adoree Jackson. So here's the statement. Jackson will wind up being the starter or starting quarterback on the outside. Are you running or are you passing with it?
I'm passing. I'm a little lukewarm on this signing. Adoree Jackson used to be a really good player. He's going to be 30 this year. He only played 47% of the snaps for the Giants last year, so he wasn't really a full-time starter. In a secondary in New York that you look at that team right now, you could argue going into the draft other than quarterback, cornerback is one of their biggest needs. Like Deonte Banks hasn't turned out. Like Andrew Phillips is a good nickel, but they really don't have anyone on the outside. I don't think Adoree Jackson at this stage of his career, the fact that he didn't play much last year with the Giants, and I know it was a new scheme under Shane Bowen, but once was a really great athlete. I'm not sure if he's that type of athlete, and it's unfair to expect him at 30 years old to be the elite athlete that he used to be at USC when he was a track, ran track and played both ways. I mean, he's just not that player. I don't think it hurts to add a guy like that because of the veteran experience, and maybe he'll provide some good mentorship for Cooper DeJean and Quincy Mitchell. But at this stage, I also think those guys are probably ready, to kind of handle things on their own, and maybe they don't need that that presence as much. And two, I think ideally the Eagles would probably want Kelee Ringo to start. In coming up in his third year, they moved up a couple of years to get him in the fourth round because they had a higher grade than they were willing to trade a third round pick to go get him because they had a higher grade than a fourth rounder. They visioned him probably as a starter eventually. Hasn't happened yet because they drafted the two rookies and they had Darius Slay, but you figured if it's going to be his year, this is it. And I think Adoree Jackson maybe is a guy that you bring in and you don't just hand Kelee Ringo the job. You got to push him a little bit. But I don't see him beating out Kelee Ringo. I think they're going to give Kelee Ringo every single opportunity. And I think there's a good possibility they draft another young corner to develop in this room, whether that's on day 2 or day 3. So Adoree Jackson might make the roster. I don't even know if that's really a guarantee. You didn't pay him a lot of money, so maybe he doesn't even make the roster. But he's a veteran presence who will compete for a roster spot and be a possible depth piece as your 4th or 5th corner. But I don't see him starting.
What do you think, Bob? Are you running or are you passing?
I'm passing. I think Kelee Ringo is the guy they want to win this job. I'm kind of conflicted here with Adoree because when you look at his PFF numbers from last season, they're not bad. His 64.5 coverage grade. His overall grade was 69. His best game of the year was against the Ravens. He played 45 snaps that day, had an 87.3 grade and a 95.7 run and 78.9 passing or tackling grade that day. Good coverage grade that day. So the PFF numbers look good. Here's what makes me conflicted. So these Giants guys keep coming to me who I cover. And when we saw the Giants this year, I asked some of my buddies who I covered the Giants with, Adoree, what's going on? And he's like, he's stealing money. That he's not much of a player anymore. But you see one thing, see the other. And Adoree addressed this when he said he had talked to Saquon before, to get an idea what the locker room like. And Saquon said it's a bunch of competitors. And I can vouch for Adoree being a alpha competitor, because the best game I can remember him playing, period. And he had been out a while with an injury. He came back and played in the Giants playoff game against the Vikings the week before they lost to the Eagles a couple years ago, 3 years ago, or however many years ago it is. And they shut down Justin Jefferson, him and Xavier McKinney, and who was the other safety on that team was he's now with the Seahawks. Julian Love, thank you, Notre Dame guy. They shut him down, and Adoree was the guy mostly responsible for that. He stepped up in a huge way. Now we're a couple years removed from that, but it's interesting that they're bringing this guy in at the very least to push Keeley. The other interesting thing, and it didn't really work that way, so I don't know how the Eagles looked at it. At the start of the 23 season, after the Giants did bring in Deonte Banks, and they thought they were, they had their next great cornerback, which they didn't. Adoree was the other outside cornerback, but on downs, Wink Martindale was using him on downs where they weren't playing base, where they were using a nickel. He was using it as a nickel the first 4 games. They abandoned it after 4 games. But I wonder if the Eagles have that tape and, at the very least want to maybe look at him in that role if they do have interest in Cooper DeJean playing outside. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of stuff is on the table. If it was me, I wouldn't want to mess with Cooper because he was so good in the slot. But there are a lot of things I'm sure they look at and consider.
Yeah, good stuff. Next one, linebacker Zach Baun spoke for the first time since signing his 3-year contract extension, and shared why he decided not to test free agency. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I really actually didn't want to leave. Like, just what we built here, the culture here, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I was just a piece of the puzzle that was put into a great culture already established. The people that work here, the systems in place, just everything I felt here this past year. Just felt right for me and my family as well. So really didn't want to leave and just appreciated everything we built.
As you heard, Baun mentioned about being a cog in that defensive system. And here's the RPO question for Baun. His numbers next season will increase, and he will finish in the top 5 once again, and also be in the top 5 defensive player of the year voting. Are you running or are you passing?
I'll start here. I'm going to pass. And that doesn't mean he's not going to have a good season, but he had such a great season. One of the other things he said yesterday was, there was a point there late in the season where I just knew I was going to make a play. I didn't know when or how or where. He said, but I just was in this zone and I knew I was going to make this play, going to make a play. He was just so good that I could see him not being quite as good and still being very good. But the other question for him right now is he was really good, and a 1A really he was great. And a 1A at, just maybe shy of great was Nakobe Dean next to him last year. And we don't know what Nakobe's injury status is going to be coming into the season. He might not have Nakobe for the start of the season next year. So that could be a bit of an adjustment. Oren Burke stepped in, did a great job in that role, but he's obviously not here. I do have a lot of faith in Jeremiah Trotter and think Trotter will start for this team at some point in his career. But I could see Zach Baun taking a little bit of a step back and still being a really good linebacker.
Nice. What do you think, Cayden? Are you running or are you passing with that?
I'm going to pass as well for similar reasons. There's a world where Zach Bond is even more sound in the system and plays even better to a degree, but maybe it goes unnoticed because it's hard to replicate the stats that he had. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to force 5 fumbles again, 3.5 sacks. He was always around the football last year forcing turnovers, and it's a 1-year sample size because he didn't play that much with the Saints. So I'm not sure if this is who Zach Bond is consistently in terms of like forcing the turnovers. I think turnovers vary a ton, especially in defense. Maybe that's who he is, and he's consistently forcing 5 fumbles and getting picks. But I don't see that. I think that's gonna be tough to repeat. But as a sound, solid player in the middle of the defense who racks up a ton of tackles, there's a chance to me he gets around 140, 150 tackles again. He's a really smart player. I think he's only going to get better in Vic Fangio's system. But to be a defensive player of the year candidate back-to-back years is tough to project. But I don't see him necessarily declining either. He's going to be a good player, but just those stats are tough.
Now we've come to the final segment of today's show, which is a 2-minute warning, where I'm going to ask these guys a question. If they finish in time, congratulations to you. They'll give their answer and it'll be congrats. Okay, nothing happens. If they don't finish within 2 minutes, they'll hear this whistle. And then they'll lose a 7th round pick in the draft of life or whatever. I don't know. I got nothing good today on that one. So we're going to start out with Bob, with you on this question. And this was going to be based off of the last question in terms of Zach Bond. Of all of the free agent signings, who will be the player that will step up and be the next Zach Bond type player and immediately make an impact? Your time starts now.
I think I can just already declare myself a winner. I wrote about this subject for this morning. I think I'm going to tell people to read. No, I won't do that. I'll give you my pick. I actually had 3 candidates in the story this morning. They were Azeez Ojulari, who we already talked about, Josh Uche, we briefly mentioned, and Kenyon Green, who Kenyon technically isn't a free agent. He was traded for, but you could see him being like a Mekhi Becton type story. But I'm going to go with Josh Uche on this list for a couple reasons. One is he's already had a double-digit sack season. He posted 11.5 in 2022 when Bill Belichick was still the head coach. Unfortunately, in his 4 other NFL seasons, he's got 9 sacks and not really been much of an impact player. Also concerning, and which kind of puts him in the Zach Bond category. He got traded to the Chiefs in the middle of last season and basically disappeared, didn't play at all in the playoffs. So he's got a lot to come back from here. But I think he might be a better fit, and that Fangio and Jeremiah Washburn can get to him and take him to another place. The year he had the 11.5 sacks, he also had 56 pressures, which would have been 3rd on this team behind Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat last season. There's obviously a spot there for him with Josh Sweat gone. We've already talked about who's going to fill that other spot that was vacated by Sweat in terms of being the other edge rusher on the field the most amount of time. So he's got a real chance to do it. Unlike Zach Bond, also, he doesn't have to do it at a different position. So that's a little different. But I'm going to make Josh Uche my Zach Bond potential winner award.
3 seconds left. I was hovering over the button. Bravo. Good job on that.
Hit that button. Get away from that button. Get away.
All right.
Stop your hand.
Oh. All right, Cayden, it's your turn to go with this. And the question once again, of all the Eagles free agent signings, who will be the player that will step up and be the next Zach Bond type player and immediately have an impact? Your time starts now.
It's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but I'll go with Azeez Ojulari just because I really don't see any other candidates. Bob's choice of Uche would be my second pick. Nobody else on the roster really stands out. It's tough for me to compare Kenyon Green to Zach Bond because he's more like, kind of like the Mekhi Becton. But for me, Ojulari has been a player, although he's had more success than like a Zach Bond did before he came here. He hasn't really fully reached his potential in the NFL, partly due to injuries, but also playing on a better defense now. I think he'll come in and he'll fit well. I think what we saw out of Vic Fangio last year is that he gets the most out of players, whether that was Bond or the two rookie corners or Reed Blankenship, Nakobe Dean. I mean, he just seemed to get the most out of everyone. And I think there's a world where Azeez Ojulari comes in here and if he stays healthy, we've seen him get 8 sacks as a rookie. We've seen him in limited action in 11 games last year, get 6 sacks, 7 games in 2022, get 5.5 sacks. So he's already been a productive player on worse defenses and in a better scheme. He could take a step up from being a really solid starter / rotational, kind of edge rusher to maybe a guy who's a Pro Bowl candidate. And it seems a little far-fetched, but he has the talent to do it. He's going to be playing in a really good defensive line still with a lot of young players. He'll benefit from playing next to a guy like Jalen Carter. And he has the talent to develop into a really good player. And I wouldn't be stunned if he got 10 to 12 sacks next year, made a Pro Bowl, and then cashed in elsewhere and gave the Eagles another comp pick in the future. I could see that, as his potential projection going forward.
10 seconds left. Good job, you guys. You both, and I was going to name you guys both winners because you didn't mention Charlie Hewitt, the long snapper, as the guy to be that. So bravo to both you guys for approaching that.
We also forgot to mention the one great thing about in both segments we talked about Azeez. He could also thrive off this Georgia thing. He's going to be back with his Georgia guys. So they seem to like playing with each other. All they do is win championships. Oh.
I know Glenn Schumann came in a couple of years ago for a visit for defensive coordinator job at the time. But you look at that now, he's probably like, maybe I should have taken it. Yeah. He would have basically just had a bit of continuation, but I'm pretty sure he's happy where he's at Georgia. But I want to thank you guys all for listening to our show today. This will be up. Make sure you also send in some reviews. Let us know how we're doing on the show. Make sure to read all of our stuff or NJ.com/Eagles. We'll continue to have the latest free agency news. And also as well, too, with the draft coming up, we'll start having some stuff that's starting to leak out from here and there as well, too. So for Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele, I'm Chris Franklin. Everybody have a good one. See ya. The No-Huddle Show podcast is brought to you by Penco Tech. With 2 convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey and Bristol, PA, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years. Featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step today at pencotech.edu. That's PENNCOTECH.edu.